This is the Awful Announcing Podcast. Here's your host, Brandon Contes.
Alrighty, welcome to episode 96 of the Awful Announcing Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Contes, and this week we are joined by the co-host of Bear Bets for Fox Sports. He is a contributor to Big Noon Kickoff on Fox. He is a former producer and contributor on ESPN's College GameDay. He is Chris the Bear Fallica. Chris, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today. What were your thoughts last week when you found out Lee Corso was going to retire from GameDay?
It certainly wasn't a surprise. I think it's been anyone who's been paying attention the last couple of years has kind of seen it coming. It's sad in a way because it's an end of an era. I mean, look, I'm no longer on the show, but I spent 20 something years with the guy, and he gave me the nickname, the Bear. So I mean, I owe it all to him. But yeah, if you saw the show, like during the season now, with me being on Big Noon, I don't get an opportunity to watch the show really on Saturdays because we're getting set, but being home during the playoffs and just kind of seeing the limiting of how they were using him and just the segments that he were in. It's time. He's 90 years old, going to be 90 years old, but by the time the season starts, and it's funny when he had the stroke, however many years ago it was kind of like one of those things like, do we think he's going to be able to make it back and be a part of GameDay? Unfortunately, he was. I mean, we were having conversations back then, like, what are we going to do? Who's going to replace Lee if he can't come back? And my guess, again, I don't know anything, but I would assume that they're just going to leave the set as is now because there really isn't anyone who can replace Lee. But no, I'm happy he's going out the way he wants to go out. It'll be good to see him. I'm assuming, again, you're probably going to have a first Headgear at Ohio State and a last Headgear at Ohio State. I would guess GameDay will probably join us in Columbus, where Big Noon will be for Ohio State, Texas would be my guess.
Yeah, that was going to be one of the questions, is where you thought he should close out his career, because I think the two options could be Ohio State or at FSU, but you'll lean Ohio State there?
Yeah, I would lean Ohio State just because it's a spot where, like I said, I don't want to say maybe sentimentally, but it was the site of where the first Headgear and the histrionics behind it with Kirk's future wife, or future at the time. I can't remember if they were married in 96 or 97 when Kirk first had when Allison got him the Brutus Headgear. But anyway, side of the first Headgear, I would think side of the I guess Lee always would joke when there was a toss-up type pick on the show where never forget your first love would always be kind of a punchline for him. So my guess would be he in the show will not forget his first love, which is Brutus and the Ohio State Headgear, and I'm sure that will probably be the place where he closes out his College GameDay tenure. The other dark horse, I guess, could have been potentially Notre Dame, Miami, but that game's going to be on Sunday because Lee is from Miami, so kind of be like a roundabout way of first the final show in the city where he was born. But I would think Ohio State, Texas will probably be the site for them.
Were you with GameDay by then in 96 when he had his first Headgear?
Oh yeah, I started in 96, the same year that Kirk started, and it was a way to commemorate Kirk's first show. Or actually, the Headgear was 97. I should take that back. But it was Kirk's first show in Columbus at the time, right after being doing everything in Ohio State. So it was a way to make that show special for him and wanting to get the Headgear on and how can we make this memorable? And it was a way to kind of pay a little tribute to Kirk and Allison as well. But that was kind of the story behind it. Allison was a former cheerleader at Ohio State and had connections with the cheer squad and the mascots and was able to make that happen. But I started on the show when in 96 as well. But you know what? Now you're right. It was 96. I keep getting my my years screwed up. It was such a long time ago. It's funny because someone asked me like who the second Headgear was. And I used to know all this stuff off the top of my head when I was updating, when I was with ESPN and with GameDay and updating this Headgear database every single year. And I actually looked it up, and I said the second Headgear was actually Ohio State as well. The GameDay did a show in Iowa a couple of weeks after the Ohio State-Penn State game in Columbus. So yeah, the first two Headgears were actually Brutus the Buckeye Headgear. But yeah, no, 96 was the year I started. Kirk and I started the same year. And had been on the road every year with them until 2022 for my final year.
Did it seem like something that could potentially take off at the time and become a staple of the show?
I don't think it did, but I think after the first couple of Headgears, and then later on in that year when we were at LSU, and when he put on the Big Al Headgear before a big Alabama LSU game, and a fan, I think, threw a golf ball or a beer can at Kirk. It bounced up on the set like right there. I think the way the fans reacted, I think we probably realized we may have had something then. Is kind of a unique way to end the show. Because remember, too, that at the time that year, the show wasn't on the road every week. The show was only an hour long. And then in 97, I think the show expanded maybe to an hour and a half. And then we finally went on the road a few more times. And then it wasn't until like Discover Card got involved and Discover became the weekly sponsor. Like we were on the road every week then. And at that point, it was like, okay, this is going to be a thing. Fans are coming out. Fans are getting excited. Fans want a big payoff. And that ultimately kind of became a way to go off the air after the final pick segment. So yeah, it took a little while, but ultimately when we got on the road every year, I think it's when that segment really took off with the fan involvement.
As a former producer of the show, would you advise ESPN to continue that Headgear pick segment or retire it with Lee Corso?
I would retire it. I mean, there isn't going to be another Lee Corso, and there really is no. I would just assume that they'd go off the air with their pick segment, and I don't know if they have Pat or Nick or Dez or Kirk, whoever do the final pick, but I can't imagine just knowing the people who were involved in the decision making there that they're going to A, replace Lee, and B, have somebody do a Headgear, because nobody will be able to do it the way Lee did. It's kind of his thing. And I think the best way to honor him would be with him leaving the show. The Headgear kind of is retired too. But I would just think that the show will now continue with Reese, Dez, Kirk, Pat, and Nick Saban is on the set the entire time. Adding anyone else, it feels like a little bit of on a permanent basis, a little bit of overkill.
Yeah. What was traveling with Lee like? Like, how was he received by the crowds at college campuses?
Oh, he was an icon, a hero. Everybody, you had the Lee Corso, will you marry me signs out there. I mean, Lee was he kind of missed his calling as an actor, but he always had this little motto that we're in the entertainment business and college football is our vehicle. So he always led like with the entertainment part of it. Like he would be great at winding a crowd up, leading them to believe. Oh, he'd play up an upset. Oh, they got no shot, and then at the end he'd come in with the uppercut and he can punch him right in the right in the stomach and go completely opposite of the way he was building up the Headgear. But in a way, like that's what the crowd loved about him. It was like you would tantalize them with believe, and then nope, boom, I'm coming the other way. And in a sense, like the crowd, I think, liked that even more. That it gave them an opportunity that if they did pull the upset, or if Lee's pick was wrong, the next time GameDay was in town, they could let him have it. But it was always a deal of love and appreciation and excitement in anticipation with Lee on the set. The way Lee would always come on the set with the helmets from the side front of the set with he'd raise one and then raise another and then ultimately throw the road team down on the ground before the show started to get the fans riled up. The only time I can say there was actually a near incident with Lee was unfortunately at my alma mater. And I think it was 2000 when GameDay was at the Orange Bowl and we did our show in the parking lot. I think it was either after or the Syracuse game or after the Virginia Tech game. I forget which game it was, but late in the day, GameDay was still doing like post-show segments at that time and segments later in the night. And after a day of college football and a day of watching Miami beat up on whoever it was, a lot of liquored up fans in the parking lot, and obviously Lee being a Florida State guy and not campaigning, but saying, I'll say it, campaigning for Florida State to be in the national title game. A couple of Miami fans got a little too close, and someone either pushed him or hit him on the shoulder or something. And Lee, the old school Miami street tough, like he turned around and was like, "Who did that?" And a couple of people actually on the show, I think Chris Fallica's brother was actually one of them who was with Lee at the time. And his brother, come on, let's go. But Lee was ready to go. And I, at that age and at that time, I wouldn't have bet against Lee. That's for sure.
Yeah, no cell phone cameras to capture that.
No, it's amazing because that was a completely different time and place. Yeah. We talk about that all the time. I should say talked about that all the time, about how like if we back in the early days of the show, like we would go out. The show was only an hour long. We'd go out, have a nice dinner, and go to the bars for a little while just to get the lay of the land, the vibe, the feel, and just kind of hang out. But we could never ever do that nowadays with all the cameras and social media. Who knows what would have come of that? But but 96, 97, when the show was still only a hour and a half on a Friday night, we'd go out and mingle a little bit just to kind of go out and unwind and relax a little bit before the show.
You mentioned that he gave you the nickname the Bear. What was your relationship like with Lee?
Oh, it was fantastic. It was always like it's someone who, I didn't play college football or anything, but I always respect your coach, respect your elders. He was like seen as he was like a coach / grandfather to me, and that was always how I treated him. It was funny, like coming into my first year on the show, and having never met him before, I quickly learned that he was a creature of habit, and he had a routine, and like every Monday morning, I would come in and there would be a voicemail call from 407, and I'd get the voicemail, turn it on. Chris Fallica, this is Lee Corso. Good morning. If you could please call me back at 407. Every voicemail was the exact same. Even after 15 years, he's still leaving me his number to call him back, like I haven't had it memorized or scored by then. But yeah, he would literally just go through all of the big games of the week and say, could you get me the average height and weight of the offensive line and defensive line for this? Could you tell me what their record is in games versus top 10, whatever it was, like one thing that he wanted to hit on at that point in time. And look, 96, there really wasn't databases. There weren't databases that we created. There weren't online sites like Poll Archive or College Football Reference or statistical databases from Elias or wherever else that had these types of things. So it would take a little bit to go through and manually do. So
sure.
It was always fun to do. But I got to just kind of know his habits pretty quickly, and just the nickname, it just came about in a funny way. Just anybody who had been out with or seen Kirk and I out at dinner or a meal just kind of know that any dead space on the table was a waste of space. So we were out at brunch one day. We had literally just woken up a little while beforehand. Gym shorts, T-shirt, just kind of like, hey, Bear, not Bear, but let's go, Chris, let's go down and get some lunch or something to eat. So we went down to this restaurant in the hotel lobby, and Lee comes walking in, typical jeans, leather jacket, white tennis shoes. And Lee he didn't steer clear from the attention. He actually wanted to be noticed. So he would walk over and loud, "Yeah, Chris Fallica, Curve Street, how you guys doing?" And we're, "Hey, coach, come." He'd come over. So he looks at the table, and then he looks at Kirk, and he looks at me, and he looks at the table again. And then he looks at me and goes, "Look at you, Fallica. You're just like a big bear. You eat, you sleep, you shit, you take a nap, you sleep again. You're just like a grizzly bear." So that's how the nickname Bear came about, and ever since then it stuck. You can't give yourself a nickname, but
of course,
if you're going to have a nickname and being accused of having 3 habits like that, it may as well come from Lee.
Is there an on or off-air memory that you have of Lee that kind of best sums up what it was like to work and spend time with him?
I think obviously the one that comes to mind immediately is the Houston show where he dropped the F-bomb, which I think is everybody's. And I can remember that day was weird because I used to travel with Kirk to the site of the Saturday night ABC game. So we were getting set to leave Houston immediately. We knew we got a call from the plane company, the charter company. The wind is the headwind is strong. We're actually going to have to stop for fuel because it's going to take longer than usual. So Kirk was like, "Okay, we're going to need to be ready to go." So I'm packing up my computer and my backpack before that final segment. And I had the headset on just to listen to the show in case anybody needed anything. I could talk to them really quickly. So I'm packing up and I'm hearing the segment and not really watching it. And so all of a sudden I hear Lee doing his, "How can you pick against SMU? And I hear it, and then I hear, and I pause and I look up at Kirk and I'm mouthing did he just if you see the video, you can see Kirk give the eyes and a little nod. He's reacting to me, just saying, did he just say what it, but yeah, that was, and then we get to Oregon later that night and it's Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly. Was it Pete? No, it was Lane at the time. It was Lane and Chip because it was 11, I think it was, or 12.
Yeah, I think that was 2011.
And I wasn't on the field. I was in the truck by then, getting set to hooking up and getting logged in. But Kirk would always go down to the field beforehand. And Kirk tells the story about Chip seeing him. Chip's on the goal line, and Kirk's kind of at midfield, just hanging out. And Chip makes a beeline to Kirk. And Kirk says, the first thing Chip says to me is, "How about coach? That was unbelievable. That was hysterical. That was so funny." And Lane basically had the same reaction coming over. He's like, "Damn, what's up with Lee? That was great." And so to see the college football community, love that he did it and had no issue. Oh, how dare he say that 4-letter word on TV. But it was fun. And then I think just to show on air, another on air episode, just how genuine Lee was. We were at the TCU West Virginia game one year, and it was an anniversary of a Headgear, and we did a piece, and just to see how emotional he got over that piece was really a microcosm of who he was. He was just a kind man who was just as genuine and emotional as he could be. And he got more so as he got older and when he came back from the stroke, because there were people that didn't know if he could do it. And just taking that away from him at the time just would have been just cruel. But the fact he was able to come back and live the way he did and be a part of the show the way he was, because I don't think there are a lot of people probably out there, maybe those who are my age, and remember the show before he had the stroke. Lee was as quick-witted and spontaneous and funny and off the cuff as he could be. Like he got in a little spat with Barry Alvarez one day because Northwestern came back and blew a lead against Wisconsin, and Chris said something along to coach like, "Well, what a shocking loss," and Lee said something along the lines of, "He should be fired after they blew that game," and Chris is like, "Wait, what? He should be fired because of that? You're not serious about that, Lee, are you?" And Lee's like, "Well, I'm not serious about anything I say, but he shouldn't have lost that game." But it was the way how quick and spontaneous he was before the stroke was something that was just really good to remember and good to see. People, security detail, officers, sheriffs on the sideline when we would be at games. Like I think they might have been duped a little bit as well. Like when they got assigned Lee, I think they probably figured, oh, we got it easy. Lee, older guy, he's just going to want to stand on the sideline and just watch a game. Lee was going to give you a workout. This guy was up and down the sidelines, both sidelines, all over the field, on the field, in the coaching box, punched over like he was coaching the game. Like he would always be like on the sideline of the team that he picked, or the sideline of the far side where the camera could like was. It was almost like at times he was like hunting for the camera, but it really wasn't. But you could see him on the sideline of like teams that he picked. If he was really heavily like an underdog type pick, like he's on that sideline, and the police officers that drew him in terms of for the day and keeping him safe and secure and following him around, making sure he didn't get in trouble. They had to have their walking shoes on, and I think they were badly fooled when we got Corso. Oh, good, next easy day, perfect. Nope, you were putting 3 or 4 miles in that afternoon.
What year did you start doing consistent on-air work for GameDay?
I think it was 2013 was the first year I did some. 2012, I remember doing some stuff. The year that I in the Orange Bowl with Notre Dame and Alabama. But 2013, I think when the show expanded, I think that was the first year we went to 3 hours. That was the year that the Lee and Kirk and Chris Fallica basically were like, okay, we're gonna figure out a way to get you more involved, because we knew people were betting on games, and we weren't really going to dance around it. We could figure out a way to get information out there, whether it was a wagering nugget or a historical or a statistical nugget out there, and get it in a way that it could both educate bettors and non-bettors. I was always like the animated, loudmouth, like kind of excitable New Yorker. So I was always like hesitant and being like you're going to get me talking real fast with my hands, and I'm going to go New York, Long Island on you. And they're like, no, stop. We're going to do it in a way that you'll be fine. And the first year in 2013, I think it was the Georgia Clemson game, was the first year that I actually did stuff regularly throughout the show, and just figuring out a way to get like nuggets out there, like, hey, Ohio State plays Michigan State today, and the Buckeyes are a 2-touchdown favorite. But remember, the last dozen times Michigan State under Mark D'Antonio has been a double-digit favorite. They've won 10 of those games outright and covered all but one. So while the odds makers and the experts in the desert think this is going to be a blowout, don't necessarily believe that this is not going to be a close game. So it was a way to just kind of say, hey, if you're a bettor, taking Michigan State plus the points might be a good way to do it. But if you're thinking maybe this game might not be a compelling one to watch, you might want to think again about it.
Was ESPN receptive to the idea of I mean, because here you're more than 15 years behind the scenes on the show. Mm-hmm. How did ESPN react to the thought of now putting you on air?
They were welcoming behind it. That was the one thing that I will give our show not one like it's only there's only one, but there's more than one. But for Lee and Kirk and Chris to go to bat for me and just go to bed and say, hey, this is what we're doing. That's one thing. At least at the time I was there, I don't know how it's been in the last couple of years. Our upper management typically deferred to the CP, the producer, in terms of content of the show. Like whatever they thought was going to be the best site or the best TV, they typically deferred to. So it was like, okay, we're going to have Bear do this. And it was like, okay. Because, I mean, look, they knew I was involved in the show for a long time, and they knew I wasn't going to do anything to embarrass the product. And look, if it wouldn't have worked, then we would have gone in another direction. But for Kirk and Lee and Chris to have the belief that this is something that could work, and ultimately it did work, I think again it just showed our bosses that it's what made GameDay great. That you could have someone who was behind the scenes as an information guy for the longest time, making everyone else look and sound good with the Nuggets. Now he could be someone who could deliver information on the air and kind of an every man, a common man. And I think that's ultimately what Lee and Kirk's pitch was to I don't even remember who it would be, whether it was John Skipper, Norby Williamson, Jimmy was later, but whomever it was that, hey, Wild Hack, whomever, like, hey, he's kind of that you should see at the site. People are always asking him for picks. They want to know information. This could be something that really takes off because he just kind of is relatable to kind of the college football fan, our viewer, kind of just like the common man, and the way he gets excited, the way he talks, the way he gets animated, his delivery, everything kind of just has the look and feel of like a normal everyday college football fan. And I think ultimately that's been to my benefit, that people at home can kind of relate to maybe sitting in a bar or sitting on the couch and watching a college football game and just kicking it with me.
What was your comfort level being on air?
Very comfortable. It's funny because even to this day, when people ask me that question, I say I'm never nervous or was never nervous going on air on television because with me and that set and that show, I had known those guys for 20 years or so by that point, and 20 years or so, maybe a little less. And it was just like me talking to you right now. I'd be looking basically over a little GoPro camera on the top of my computer at the top of the desk. And I would just be talking to the guys in the set like we were having a normal conversation. And I think that's what made it so natural was that. And I always tell people now, what's funny is none of that makes me nervous, even when I went on to Big Noon and was with a new bunch of people. I wasn't nervous because I was just so experienced. It was actually a very nice gesture, my first show with Big Noon and Fox, to have not only Tom Rinaldi be a part of it, Aaron Andrews, who was on GameDay as well, was a part of that first show. So it kind of even made me feel a little bit more comfortable. But when I still do like public speaking, that's what makes me nervous because you're in front of a room. There is no camera, but in person, everybody's eyes are on you. Yeah. And that's where I kind of get a little like nervous. You get a little sweaty, get a little hesitant, a lot of ums and ahs maybe come in. But on camera, it was just second nature. And I was very fortunate in that sense to be put in a position where I'm just literally, okay, just take the mentality of it's like the Friday meeting. You're just sitting there talking to everybody in the room and holding court, and you're going eye contact with Kirk, Coach, Dez, Chris, Reese, whoever, and David. Didn't matter. And the spontaneous parts of it were what was great too, where I could just kind of, I had a little my headset and I had a little talkback button to either the truck or to Kirk or whomever, and be like, I want to get in here. I have a nugget, and be able to make that work was really fun.
Was your goal early in your career to get on air? Like, is that what you went to school for?
Yeah, it was, and I think it was kind of everybody's goal when you're out of college and you're starting at ESPN. It's like, one day I'd love to be on air, whether it's radio, television, whatever it might be. So my goal was always to be on air, and then there was obviously you get there and you realize your dreams are it's going to be, I don't know if that's going to be realized. And you find a niche. And fortunately, I've always been involved in stats and numbers and history and notes and just loving and immersing myself in sport. And being in research and having that production background, an inquisitive type mind, I was like, yeah, this is a pretty good career. And then it turned into kind of co-producing the show. So I'm like, yeah, this is a pretty good deal. And I am, however, I won't lie, I am fortunate that I was finally able to be given that opportunity to get on air and kind of interact with the guys and be able to ultimately realize that that dream could be realized. So it really couldn't have worked out any better, because it allowed me to get the valuable TV skills of the behind the scenes stuff, and then to kind of segue on, like we all did, college radio and college TV and things like that. So we all had the background and the dreams, but to be able to be given the floor, to be able to do it, really just kid from Long Island, absolutely living the dream. I always joked about, not joke, but I shared that, I think it was 2019, maybe 18. I forget what year it was, but it was one year where I was working the Final Four with Dick Vitale sitting courtside for the Final Four. And then that night I was getting on a plane with Sean McDonough to go to Augusta and work the Masters with Andy North, Curtis Strange, Scott Van Pelt. And I was like, if you could tell 14-year-old Chris Fallica that one day he was going to be working on college football with Chris Fowler and College Game Day and that show, and then going to Final Four and sitting courtside with Dick Vitale, and then, oh, by the way, he's going to go to the Masters and be at that course with a bunch of major champions. Like yeah, oh, okay, sure, right, that's going to happen. But for that to happen, just be beyond any of my wildest dreams.
Were you always interested in college football? Because growing up on Long Island, like you mentioned, there really isn't that big audience for college football.
I was. I have a lot of family in northeastern Pennsylvania, and obviously Penn State was the draw then. So I had the opportunity to go to a couple games and just be around my cousins who eat, drank, and sleep Penn State football. So they were always my first college football love. And it's funny because in 1986, I probably shouldn't admit this now, but I was actually rooting for Penn State to win the national championship, because I hadn't fully really done a lot of college searching and programs, and didn't really realize I was going to wind up at Miami. But I did like Miami at the time, because I did kind of like the whole renegade mentality. But like Coach Corso said with Ohio State, Brutus is my first love. So I had to go with the family there with Penn State in that 87 Fiesta Bowl. But it was Penn State football that was really my first love. And it's ironic too that I can remember whether it was that show before the Lee's first Headgear in 96, or maybe it was a little bit after, but I can remember on the road, Penn State and Joe Paterno, they used to have these little media functions at the hotel. And Chris Fowler, having grown up in State College and knowing Joe and Sue and the family, he actually took me to one of these little media gatherings that they held. And I got an opportunity to meet Joe, and Chris introduced me, and yeah, I'm from Long Island, just like you are out. And I went to West Hampton, and East Hampton was our rival. And Joe like talks about, oh yeah, Andre Johnson was a tackle playing in the NFL for Penn State, and they were one of our rivals. So it was kind of neat to get to meet Joe and talk about Joe and Long Island, and playing against one of the gut players that they recruited. And still to this day, I was really even more fortunate due to Urban Meyer's relationship with the Paterno family, with Jay and Sue. And last year got to go to Paterno's home, and Sue and the family cooked an unbelievable meal for us. So again, one of those like pinch me type moments. Wait a minute, yeah. You're 12, 13 years old, whatever, going to Penn State games, watching them, and you get to meet Joe, and then however many years later, you're at his house eating dinner with the family. So it's kind of a really cool thing. But yeah, it was Penn State football that ultimately got me into college football.
You've been with Fox for a couple of years now. Mm-hmm. How impressive is it that Big Noon has been able to become a legitimate competitor to a heritage show like College Game Day that obviously had such a massive head start.
Yeah, we're certainly trying to make some headway. And I thought 2 years ago when I first got there, that you heard our ratings were great, and a lot of the games that we had were great. And you saw a lot of the final quarter hours of the show and the final half hours of the show leading into a ton of these big Big Ten games that we had some unbelievable followings and some really, really good shows. And last year, again, we went to something that I always told people when people would ask, like, what's the best place you've ever been to? I always told people it was either somewhere where we haven't been in a long time or somewhere where we've never been. And that was the moral of the story last year with Big Noon. We went to UCF, who had never heard. We went to BYU. We went to Texas Tech. We went to places that had never had shows. And to get the reception at those places that we did was amazing. So it shows that our show does have force. It does have staying power. It's got an audience. It's got people who are looking for maybe something different from what GameDay is now giving them, whether it's our mix of analysts, whether it's our mix of being a little more X and O with football, whether it's coming on at 10 and going right into a noon game at that, whatever it might be. But it's funny because I hear from people who, again, whether it's lip service or not, I tend to think it's not, who are like, we love watching you on Big Noon. We watched you on GameDay a long time. We love watching you on Big Noon now. The show is great. It's entertaining, and for whatever reason, don't want to watch GameDay anymore. But no, I've certainly heard from more than one people that they and it's probably more the Big Ten centric fan, because that's primarily where we're going to. A lot of these sites are a Big Ten games, and I certainly think that's going to be the case this year. It'll be interesting week one. How the show goes, because you're going to have the mix of SEC fans watching Texas and the Big Ten fans watching Ohio State. And at the same time, there may be a few that tune over to GameDay to see what Lee's final segment's going to be. And we're certainly not dumb enough to think that that's not going to happen. But week one will be interesting, and then a couple of weeks throughout the year. It's funny, we have our Big Noon text chain going, and we're kicking around some thoughts as to potentially where we could be earlier in the year. And maybe we have a return trip to West Virginia for the backyard brawl. That's certainly a potential. A trip to Cyhawk, Ames to go visit the Iowa State Nuts. It was funny. I think I was getting the guys excited about that, because I can remember when GameDay went to Ames for the first time, how it was like the scene from Field of Dreams, where you had the car lights down the road waiting to park and tailgate at like 5, 6 in the morning, and then people pulling up and unloading crates of Natty Light from their flatbeds onto the ground. So if GameDay week one, fine, but if Big Noon winds up going Ohio State, backyard brawl, and then Cyhawk, Ames for 3 weeks, then another new site would be for Ames. So it'd be a pretty good start for the year, and another opportunity for us to show that the show here has some staying power.
How does the camaraderie with the cast of Big Noon compare to that of what you experienced at GameDay?
I can't say it's the same. And the only reason I can't say it's the same is because I just haven't been there long enough. Like the guys who have been there from the start, it's what the GameDay camaraderie is. Yeah. And look, they welcome me with total open arms, and I immediately busted chops from the start. But it's just like I have only been with them for 2 years. So I mean, I was with those guys forever, but in terms of like the openness, it's been terrific. There was never once has there been like oh yeah, he's come from GameDay, he thinks he knows everything now, he's better than none of that at all. I mean, it's been, if anything, that's kind of been like a tongue-in-cheek joke as a way to kind of welcome me in a little more, like just kind of make fun of me for it. If anything else, not really like thumb their head at it. But no, like I said, those guys have been great. We go to dinner every week all together, Thursday, Friday nights, which kind of what we did at Game Day. We hang around after the show together, watching games, just like we did on the bus with Kirk and Chris and whoever and Reese and whoever else. A lot of similarities, a lot of you know what breaking, and just kind of treating. The more you bust, you know what, the more of a family you really are. If you can't kid each other and you can't kid yourself, and then what's the really sense? You know, I think that's the best part. I think what I can say about the group is they don't take themselves seriously in that sense. Like they know it's a college football show. We're here to talk football. We're here to entertain. We're here to have fun. It's not NSA documents, and it's not world news. We're here as a college football show, and that's all we're going to be. But yeah, no, everyone's been great.
Yeah, we mentioned earlier how Game Day and Big Noon likely could be at the same location week one for Lee's final show. Is that strange when that happens? Like, do you get to see them? I mean, have you ever accidentally went on the wrong bus?
Now that would be funny. No, I have not accidentally gone on the wrong bus, but I would like to go see. I don't even know. I don't know if Bobby or TJ or whoever the old bus driver is, just to go say hi. But no, the only time I have interacted with those guys was like I will always, and I'll make a beeline to them as soon as the shows are off the air. I'll go over right after the show is over. Go give Coach a hug, go say hello, go say hi to Reese and Kirk and the people behind the scenes, Dez and makeup artist, our Ryan, one of the ops people, one of the runners who was just the absolute best, who would do anything for you. Those are the producers. Like I would make a case to just go over there, quickly say hi to them, and then make my way back over to the to the Big Noon crew. But it's not really, it's not weird at all. I mean, that's one thing about making the move is a lot of people, you get worried when you leave a place that your relationships are only your relationships because you're coworkers, and you find out who are your friends and who were only your friends because you work together. And I've learned that everybody on that set is my friend. And after we still keep in touch. I'm going to hear from Kirk about Kentucky Derby next week. Who in picks, I go there, but I'm not going this year. But the group of guys that I've known with him forever, I'll be hearing from all of them. I was texting Dick Vitale last night about how he texted his picture about how with the chocolate cannoli in his hand. So I was telling him about the best cannoli I've ever had was in Florence, and being in touch with Reese about congrats on your new deal. Would have loved to have worked with you again, but congratulations. And just we all, David Pollock, I still keep in touch with. I mean, Todd McShay, I just did a podcast with. Like everyone, they're all your friends. So that's good. Just the camaraderie there is great, and they're all sent me out in an unbelievable fashion in 2022. And now I have a new group of friends. I've got Brady Quinn, I've got Matt Leinart, I've got Mark Ingram, I've got Urban Meyer, I've got Rob Stone. All these people are all, and it's funny how many ex-ESPNers are at Fox Sports and Big Noon. Rick Thomas, who was a feature producer for Game Day then, Tom Rinaldi, meeting Jenny Taft and Gus and Joel Klatt, and getting to know them has been great. So it's worked out. It's worked out great. And people always like, oh, do you regret it? Do you miss Game Day? Do you miss ESPN? And I say the only thing that I miss about Game Day and the college football season is being a part of the postseason and being at the college football playoff games, being in the truck in Kirk's ear and Chris's ear during the game and feeding them observations and notes. That's the part of the year that I miss. But for like the regular season, I wouldn't trade anything for the world. But I would love one day to get an opportunity with Big Noon to do a college football preview type show, whether it's at the Rose Bowl. You would think that the Big Ten being Fox's big college football partner, that maybe an opportunity would arise one day to potentially do that or be at a college football championship game. Hopefully that could happen. And if it does, it would only strengthen and further those in the college football world that want more Big Noon. It would give an opportunity for that. But on the flip side, it's the same way. Had I stayed at ESPN or not left ESPN, I would be missing out on things that I had at ESPN that I no longer did. Like I used to love when ESPN had the horse racing coverage and being a part of the Derby or the Preakness or the Belmont. I used to love at ESPN when ESPN had the Euros and the World Cup. I always told people, until still to this day, tell them the best thing that I ever was involved in my years at ESPN and years working, which really was ESPN, was when I was in South Africa for 6 weeks for the 2010 World Cup. It was great. It was just an eye-opening experience to be in that country at that event. It was just everything about it was fantastic. And then, oh, by the way, ESPN no longer had the World Cup and the Euros. ESPN no longer had the Belmont Stakes, and Fox had the Belmont Stakes, and Fox had Euros, and Fox had World Cup. So that's the trade-off. I wouldn't have with Fox now. I have the opportunity to be a part of those things and be a part of the Super Bowl, which I was this year, and college football. So it was like adding things that I used to love that I wouldn't have been able to be a part of at ESPN anymore. To do that at Fox, it made the decision a lot easier than I think a lot of people might have realized.
Yeah. How was working with Pat McAfee on Game Day?
Pat's great. Pat would always, before he would, right after the Friday meeting and before his show got going, would always come over to me. And this is the time, I think, when he was still with FanDuel. So he'd come over with the FanDuel ad open and be like, all right, there. You and that big noggin of yours with so much information in there and too much information that nobody even really needs to know, and nobody knows what's in there. All right, what do we like here? And we'd go down the lines, and I'd give him some picks, and he's like, really? You're taking them plus the points against them? Yeah. All right, that's what we'll do. So Pat was spontaneous and off the cut. Pat and I got along great, and he's someone that I will never say a bad word. I know people have whatever their opinion is of Pat, and he's certainly the fact that he's such a free spirit and opinionated and open-ended. He certainly said some things I'm sure that maybe he regrets, but I can only react to a person and treat a person as they treat me. But Pat was a welcome addition to Game Day, because I think, and look, at the time, and it's funny thinking about it now, like that was right at the time when Big Noon was on the road and they were getting their audience, and Fox was getting great games in the Big Ten at that time, and splitting Big 12 games with ESPN and their college. And maybe there wasn't a given that ESPN ABC was going to have the college football playoff, and the Big Ten championship was going to go to Fox now. And like Fox was making some inroads in college football. And I think maybe Game Day at the time, it was maybe when Lee was really maybe starting to noticeably slow down. Pat was really an energizing force, a good interjection for Game Day at the time. He brought a demo to Game Day that maybe it wasn't there. He brought an opinion. He brought a personality. He brought something that wasn't there to Game Day. It was different. And I think for Game Day, that was great because you never really knew what he was going to say. And he understood that showmanship, that entertainment portion of it. And at the time, like I'm sure they would have loved to have had him on every week, but he still had the WWE stuff. He still had his show. So he wasn't ready to commit to a week in, week out until ultimately he finally did. But Game Day and Pat McAfee was, in my opinion, a marriage, a good marriage for both. And I think the show desperately needed a little bit of energy from him at that time. And he certainly, he gave them something that they needed.
Was there any resistance just because he was such a big personality going on to a successful show? Like, what was there resistance to having Pat there by anyone?
Not that I heard. on the set or anything. I think the good thing about our show group always was whatever can make the show better, we're all for. I mean, maybe there was the heat of the moment, or like you're looking over the rundown on a Thursday or a Friday, and people wanted to have a comment in every segment, and I was like, oh, this segment's only going to be Dez, Pat, Kirk, and whomever. This segment's only going to be Kirk, David, Pat. And people would have like things that they want to say about a topic they wouldn't have an opportunity of. So in that sense, like segments having maybe too many talking heads in it, but in terms of like the camaraderie and interaction and recognizing what every person there can bring something different to the show. And I think that's what, at least I realized that. And I think everybody who's on that set now realized it too, that the makeup of that show certainly benefited from Pat. But I mean, I don't think there was any resistance, or I don't know what went on behind the scenes in terms of upper management when they were trying to sell Pat on being an addition to the show. Obviously, they weren't too hesitant about it for it to happen in the fashion it did.
I want to ask a couple of like betting sports media relationship questions. Does it feel like Fox has have they maxed out their betting content yet, or is there still room to grow there?
I think there's still room to grow here. I think our podcast and our digital show that we do every week, I think is getting bigger and better. I think a lot of the good thing is a lot of the events that we have are so betting centric that I think there is an opportunity to grow. And whether it's with me, whether it's with someone else who Fox may choose to bring in or hire, I know they have the relationship with DraftKings or whatever on the NFL Sunday show, and they have Howie and Terry, and we'll see whomever, if there's someone that replaces Jimmy this year, like give whatever for probably, but to have, whether it's me or whomever else, be a part of that show and do some things. The soccer coverage, I was being a part of the Women's World Cup. I can't wait to be a part of the World Cup next year and interject. I'm part of Euros, part of the women's, part of the Copa America last year. They're all wagering centric events. So I think there is a way to do it. I think there is a way to do I don't want to call it daily wager, but I think there is a way, whether it's on FS1 or FS2, to get some type of shoulder programming. Could it be on a YouTube channel digitally to have a betting preview, especially this time of the year? Look, every day we got NHL playoffs, NBA playoffs, baseball's going on, NFL draft. People are always, look, we're in a time and a place now where people are aware of betting. It's legal in so many states now. Obviously, Atlantic City, Vegas, and wherever else. People are looking for information. People are looking for knowledge. People are looking for good bets. And not necessarily, I think sometimes social media, it can be a little oversaturated because it's just a lot of the quick hitting 30, 45 second. Here's the same game parlay brought to you by BetMGM or whatever. And that's not what a lot of people are looking for. They're looking for analysis. So if there was a way for Fox to grow and create some type of wagering centric show daily or a couple of times a week, or maybe on a Friday going into a big college football or a college basketball type weekend, I think that's great. And that's one thing that Brad Zager had in mind this year, and I think it was pretty good. And I think we did a really good job, was on Friday when the Bruce and the Bear podcast came. It was kind of his vision, and he came to both Bruce and I about it and spoke about it. And we're like, absolutely all for it, because Bruce I've known for a long time, and that it was like Bruce's knowledge of behind news and information and maybe injuries and what's kind of going on behind the scene, what he's hearing, and my knowledge of maybe line moves and numbers and the betting world. It's kind of like the perfect marriage of Bear, how do you interpret, how would you react as a bettor to what Bruce is telling you right now? And from what I'm told, the numbers on that Friday show were really, really good. And we try to make it fast moving, like a half hour tops. And you listen on it to 1.5 times or whatever, and it's even shorter than that. But I think that's something where That was one step last year, and it wouldn't be surprising if we have another step forward this year.
Did you enjoy finding ways before sports betting was legalized to, and you kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, the ways you would when you were at GameDay, figure out ways with sprinkling in the content? Like, did you enjoy sort of the more cryptic gambling references, or do you like it better now where everything is kind of just out in the open?
I think the cryptic part of it made it kind of like funny in a sense, where you, like our early ages of GameDay, where it was like the experts in the desert expect this to be one of the higher scoring contests of the day, or the experts in the desert expect this to be the biggest blowout of the day amongst top 25 games. Or so like it was kind of tongue in cheek, and I mean, that's kind of back to Lee Corso, who understood it before most of us did. He'd have it's not. I don't have my number 2 pencil. I've got a blue pen instead. But he'd give us not so fast, my friend, and closer than the experts think. They win. They win by a field goal and a safety, meaning they weren't going to cover the 6 points. So it would be funny things like that. But I love just being able to be out in the open now and be able to say against the spread or favorite, underdog. I like the chalk in this game, whatever it might be. But in general, the fact that GameDay was ahead of the curve, like I said earlier, like we were given betting, and we knew people were betting. We weren't going to be naive. We knew what people wanted, and to do that before, whether it was SportsCenter or whatever other even NFL shows, would kind of be. You had the Swami doing it. You had Pete Axon, but to take it to college, outside of like the sports advisors and all of those old Jim Feist and Stu Feiner type shows that were on, for GameDay to be on ESPN and talking about point spreads and betting and angles and things like that. I think our viewers respected us for that, to understand that, okay, we're not dumb. We're not stupid. Here's something for a little bit of everybody. But I love now, I mean, nothing, well, I shouldn't say nothing. I'm sure there are some things, but I so thoroughly enjoy each week, and a lot of people just call it a data mining exercise, which is fine. And I openly, I'm a researcher at heart. I'm looking for notes, history. I know my producer or people on my podcast are going to ask me, when is the last time this has happened? So I love mining for notes, or looking up how certain coaches have done against the number, looking at the old like unranked teams favored against top 20 teams. What's the biggest a top 10 team has been an underdog against a team that's not in the top, stuff like that. And I love just putting those in the thread every Thursday and every Friday, and I get a ton of interaction and a ton of feedback, with both positive and negative. I mean, I listen to whether it's other podcasts or VSIN. Excuse me, little hiccup there. Little salad, little nitrogen coming back from lunch. But yeah, live TV right there, by the way. But no, I love doing that. I love being able to look at, like, I had a great Matt Campbell tweet from note from like a few about his record in games where they're either favored or an underdog of like 3 points or less. How he had this losing record. I kept saying, it's going to change. It's going to change. It's going to flip. At some point it's going to regress. But it's amazing. And finally this year it did. So just to be able to kind of be ahead of certain things like that, and just kind of use my research background mind of like what really interests me. I love doing stuff like that.
Did anybody from college football ever push back on those references, those gambling references earlier on?
I can remember early on, and I think if you notice it now, it's probably the same way. The conferences were very hesitant about doing it. Like, I know when I used to do Paul Feinbaum's show, like there was a time where you couldn't reference spreads, like SEC Network, you couldn't reference spreads. I think it's the same way, or at least it used to be the same way. Maybe the SEC Network, I don't know what it is at the Big Ten Network, but I know when we first started going, like, conferences were very like, hey, can you kind of pull back on this? And I think we did, meaning we, ESPN at the time, did play ball with that and respect their their wishes just because of the really thing. They were partners, and it is their product, and we obviously want to have a good relationship and keep their games on the air. And if they wanted us to pull back a little bit from talking about Alabama's a 27.5-point favorite this week over Mississippi State or whatever it is, fine. Then we'll go about it differently. But that's the only time I can remember someone really just coming to us and being like, hey, on like the college networks, just to pull back a little bit.
Can there be betting content that is interesting to people who don't bet?
I think there can be, and I gave interest with that before, just about how certain coaches and certain positions, when they are underdogs, and you might think this game, you'll look at whomever it is, the big favorite over whomever, and typically, and you can say, hey, this team is a big underdog, but expect them to play well today. And spots like that, the games that maybe you wouldn't necessarily watch, or one of the favorite axioms of like, oh, it's a look ahead game, or Ohio State, they're playing Minnesota this week. Next week they got Penn State. This game might keep this one on your radar. Don't be surprised if you're looking up on your scoreboard at the bottom of the screen there, and you see this game be a touchdown game, maybe because the college kids. So, of course, just things like that, little things that if you're a fan, maybe you're gonna notice. It may not necessarily be a direct inclination on a point spread, but being able to figure out a way to get a person interested in a game that they may not be interested in that game to begin with.
Has the transfer portal affected betting? Like, are you less inclined to bet on season futures because so many rosters are overhauled year to year?
Yes. It makes it very difficult to do that. And I think a perfect example is before last year, before the 2024 season, December 2023, I'm sitting there and I went on Bear Bets in New York and with Jeff, and I'm like, oh, by the way, I just bet Georgia at plus 450 to win the national championship in 2024. You're not going to see a price like that at all during the season. Lo and behold, portal, receiver, lose this, lose that. By the end of September, you found a better price on Georgia to win the national championship than I got in December. So yeah, the prices on these teams can fluctuate so much. Getting ahead of, and a lot of times you're looking to just buy numbers. Like if you got a good number on Miami to win the national championship, if you thought that maybe if you knew Carson Beck was going to remove himself from the draft and get a number on them, which I didn't, which I'm disappointed about. But if you can get ahead of moves like like teams in the big, I think the best way to attack it in terms of trying to figure out the portal, and again, it's a short sample size, but you look at the conferences that are kind of exposed to variance. Well, I think obviously the two are the ACC and the Big 12. You look at last year in the ACC, SMU brought in some Miami transfers, some other guys found themselves in the ACC championship game. I think they were like 16-1, 18-1 at the start of the year to win the ACC. Arizona State was picked last in the Big 12. BYU was picked near the bottom in the Big 12. Iowa State was a team that I picked to win the Big 12 last year. They're kind of a middling team. I got a good number on them, so I was able to just bet it back in the Big 12 championship game and make a profit. If you can kind of look at these conferences and just see like the complete roster overhauls or who lost who, and just kind of, because I don't think last year the markets really caught onto it in time, and there were a lot of bad numbers out there. Like there were a lot of Notre Dame national championship odds. There were a lot of Penn State national championship prize. Like people got good numbers on those teams to win the national championship. People got good numbers on Ohio State prior to the start of the playoff because they didn't maybe didn't understand, like, okay, Ohio State's still one of the best teams talent-wise out there. So I think in terms of trying to capitalize on the portal, it's the conference title odds and odds to make the college football playoff. That's where I kind of differ from a lot of people. Like a lot of people are the bet a little and win a lot. I'm not afraid to lay a lot to win a little. And I kind of understood the whole selection process where early in the, like when they first posted odds to make the college football playoff, like you had Ohio State and Georgia were like minus 600. And basically what you were saying is like, it was going to take 3 losses by Ohio State and Georgia to keep them out of the playoff, most likely. Like there was still a chance, like with 3 losses, if they had some wins, those teams could make the playoff. So like it was going to be ridiculous, minuscule. So like you could parlay at FanDuel and some other places, just Ohio State and Georgia to make the college football playoff, and it turned out to be like a minus 275 parlay. And I'm perfectly willing to lay whatever, knowing the true price of like the selection process and how that's going to work. So I'm curious to see if like when they post the odds to make the college football playoff this year, if they've kind of caught on to that a little bit and understand that it's going to take a hell of a lot to keep Ohio State and Georgia and Texas out of the college football playoff now.
We're recording this podcast on Tuesday. I'll note it's going to be released Friday morning. So I don't want to ask much about the NFL draft, being that it's Thursday night, but I will just ask for your, do you have a favorite quarterback in this draft?
That's a hard question. I guess of all of these guys, it probably is Cam Ward, just because you've seen his ability to kind of improvise and adjust, and he's done it in a bunch of different offenses, and he really elevated the Miami offense to a different level this year. So I think of all of them, he is the best. I will say, though, however, if this was last year, he certainly would be behind all those first-round quarterbacks. And I certainly think that there's a chance that maybe a Jackson Dart or a Tyler Shuck does become the best quarterback in this draft. I mean, it's funny. I've been on record for a while now saying if I were the Titans, I would take Abdul Carter number 1, and I would wait to take a quarterback at the top of round 2, or maybe trade back in or whatever. You've got your coaching staff intact. You've got your front office intact. You've got your stadium intact. And next year in the draft, and we don't know if Arch Manning is going to commit to the draft, but he could be there. Nussmeier could be there as well, and you could be picking in this spot again. So I do think Cam will be the best. Does that mean I think he should be the number 1 pick? Probably not.
Do you think Arch Manning will eventually be a number 1 pick, whether that's next year or the year after?
I do. I do, because you saw last year with, and I've always been hesitant in taking quarterbacks in round 1, over drafting quarterbacks in round 1, just because I like building my team in other areas and finding a quarterback ultimately later. But we saw last year, and again, I was at the front of the line, like, how could the Falcons take Michael Penix 8th? You spent all this money on Kirk Cousins, and it was like either A, you're overdrafting him, or B, you're saying we shouldn't have given Kirk Cousins all that money. And it worked out to be a really good pick, because what we saw from Penix last year showed he could play. So it wound up being a good pick. And I think that's all the more reason why you're going to see Arch go at the top of the draft. He's a quarterback. He's got the pedigree. He's got the family name. By all accounts this year in camp, he's looked great, and the team loves him, gravitates to him more than Quinn Ewers is what I'm told. But I would expect him, whether it's 2026 draft or 2027 draft, I would certainly expect Arch to go number 1.
Chris, you were great. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Anytime, man. Great talking to you.
That is Chris the Bear Fallica. I'm Brandon Contes. This is the Awful Announcing Podcast. Please rate and subscribe to this podcast. Please also subscribe to Awful Announcing's YouTube page. But regardless of how you consume Awful Announcing and the Awful Announcing Podcast, thanks for listening, and be good.
Thanks for listening to the Awful Announcing Podcast. For the latest news spanning the sports media landscape and more, check out awfulannouncing.com and follow us at Awful Announcing.